Good morning, everybody. One second. Chalk.
It's bugging you.
Well, it's going to get drowned into the
Oh, it's
cement.
slippery.
That too. the other side. Lee circles. And reverse. And shoe circles. And reverse. And pink circles. And reverse. And reverse. shoulders. Okay, you can put away your sticks. Catherine, do me a favor, will you, and adjust your camera up just a little bit because it's cutting your head off. Much better. All right, let's go on with our Earth Body, Your Body theme here. We're going to take just a couple of minutes to look at the next level, the second level here. And then we'll do a few exercises, and then we'll just continue with our silk reeling here. So, Annie, why don't you open that side of the curtain? Okay, so last time we talked about the sphere of the Earth representing your personal sphere, and the center of the sphere representing what?
The Danshin.
The Danshin, right? Okay, so number one is the sphere of the Earth itself. We'll just call that the globe. All right, and then the center of gravity for the Earth in the body itself is called the Danshin. So we'll call this center of gravity. And that is your personal sphere. And your Danshin. And we should blow this up a little closer here. Can you all read that? Catherine, can you read that okay? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what we're going to add in today is this vertical line here. On the Earth, that is the axis of rotation. And what would number 4 be? Annie?
The horror line, or central pole.
If it's on the Earth.
Oh, if it's on the Earth?
It's on the Earth.
The axis.
The line itself is the axis, but number 4 is that dot.
Oh, North Pole.
The North Pole, right.
Yeah.
And this would then be the South Pole. Exactly. All right. So axis of rotation. And 4 is the North Pole. And 5 is the South Pole. Okay, then the question is, what corresponds in the energy, the human energy body to that? All right, so for the axis of rotation, do you know what corresponds to that?
Your central pole, the Hara line.
Right, exactly, your Hara line,
yeah.
Which in Chinese is the Zhongmai. The Zhongmai, which means the central pole. So there is an axis of rotation through the body from the top of the head to the base of the spine, and that axis of rotation, the physical analog to that is the spine itself, but the energetic analog is an energy channel called the Zhongmai. Chong means central. Mai means channel, so it's the central channel. It's in the center of the body, not on the back, not on the front.
Chongmai.
Chongmai. All right, so the Zhongmai, Z-H-O-N-G-M-A-I, Zhongmai. All right, and the equivalent of the North Pole is
your
acupuncture point on the top of the head, which is the Ba Hui. And the bottom is the Hui Yin. So you have a big acupuncture point on the top of the head here. It's actually toward the back just a little bit, called the Ba Hui. That's the upper end of the central pole. There's another corresponding point at the base of the spine, at the perineum. So between the anus and the genitals, at the perineum, that's the base of the central column, and it's called the Hui Yin, which means the meeting of yin. So that's the acupuncture point where the 3 big yin channels in the body meet. The first yin channel is up and down the front of the body, and that goes all the way down to the perineum. And then the 2 yin channels up and down the legs, so the inside of the legs. And we'll do that again when I change the focus here so you can see. Okay, now that's kind of the structural side of this. What about the energetic side? One of the things that you might look at with this is rotation itself. That's maybe the most important part of the energy body for Chen style Tai Chi. But we're not going to do that this week. We'll do it next week. What I want to look at this week is expanding and contracting using this center line. So you can expand, and when you expand from the center. You expand upward to the Ba Hui as well as downward to the Hui Yin. All right, so some of this energy is coming up, and some of it is going down. All right, and the energy, the name for that kind of energy is Peng, P-E-N-G. And we're going to call that number 6. the truth is, the pung goes out in every direction from the center. But there's kind of a special point in that sphere, and that's the axis of rotation. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's the expansion side of it. There's also contraction. All right, we'll call that number 7. All right, that energy is called G energy, J-I. I should have this over here. So on the Earth itself, the contracting energy is called gravity. It's gravity. Gravity pulls everything in toward the center. Does anybody know what the expanding energy is called? It's called pressure. When you bring a lot of atoms together, which gravity is doing, it's going to cause a pressure. It would be like, suppose you opened up a bottle and you just kept stuffing atoms into it. The more you stuff in, the higher the pressure is going to get. So that's called atomic pressure. And when you do that, things heat up. So the center of the Earth is actually liquid iron.
You told me it was as hot as the surface of the sun.
The center of the Earth is as hot as the surface of the sun, which is a pretty interesting thing. You're standing on fire.
It's a dragon.
Yeah, it's a dragon.
We live on a dragon. We live on the back of a dragon.
Well, we should put this in here as pressure.
So pressure is expanding, correspond to expanding?
When you increase the pressure of something, it wants to expand because it wants to relieve that pressure.
Oh.
Right? So if you have a bottle and you start stuffing atoms into it, the pressure is going to build up more and more and more because the atoms want to separate. They want a certain amount of space around themselves. And you keep cramming more and more and more, the pressure builds up and up and up, and eventually it will explode. Right? It will expand really astronomically.
And the pressure takes the form of heat.
Exactly.
Or at least that's one of the ways that it expresses itself.
So the sun, for instance, is under enormous pressure. It wants to expand, but its gravity is so strong that it wants to pull in. So it arrives at a kind of equilibrium between those two forces. And that's why the sun is the size that it is. The same for the Earth and the same for you, right?
Sort of like yin and yang.
Sort of like yin and yang.
Wow.
Exactly. So you could say, all right, this is the yang energy, and this is the yin energy. Right? So this is plus, and this is minus. It's not that one is not better than the other. In fact,
and one doesn't exist without the other.
Exactly. They are complementary opposites. which is a very sort of strange way of looking at the world. But what it means is one does not exist without the other,
That's
literally.
really fascinating.
Yes, exactly.
That's really strange.
So originally, yin and yang referred to the sunny and the shady sides of a mountain. You would look at a mountain and you'd see the sunny side, that's the yang side. The shady side is the yin side. But neither one can exist without the other. They come together. So they're actually, in one sense, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
But on the other side, they're opposites to each other. That's why I use my little coin here. I should just keep this over by the camera. A coin is really a perfect example of this. You've got a heads. I don't know whether I can focus on here. You've got a head on one side, and you've got a tail on the other side. So they're very different, and yet they're actually the same thing. Just two sides to the same coin. Yin and Yang theory is what Tai Chi is built on. All right? And this is a perfect example of it. Okay, questions? Any questions?
No, I'm just amazed at the way everything lines up.
Yeah, exactly. I should have done this one.
So,
Yeah.
Malcolm,
Yes.
would you say there's an equivalence between Eros and Thanatos and Yin and Yang, or is there?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you equate Eros with life, the life function, and Thanatos with the death function, they are the same thing. Literally. If you look at them on the surface, they look like they're opposites. But actually, underneath, they're just two sides to the same coin.
Over the long term, I mean, the Chinese system seems to take into account more of the universe, and Eros and Thanatos seems to be, what little I know about that philosophy, less rooted in physical and more in spiritual or psychological.
I think that's probably true in the Western tradition, although in ancient Greece, I think they were actually seen as real powers in the world, not just in our brains, but out there in nature too. The Taoist philosophy is very natural, very oriented toward nature. But I think actually in the Western tradition, originally it was too. It got a little academic as time went on in the Middle Ages.
Where did we go wrong?
I don't know. Maybe it was Plato. We can blame Plato. I don't know. Western philosophy is very interesting, but I got to tell you, from my point of view, the two philosophical positions I like the most are Taoism and Advaita, which is a Hindu non-dualistic tradition, and then for fun, Sufism too. Those all seem to me to be much closer to what's really happening in nature. The Western philosophical tradition somehow socially got off the rails as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I like the Taoist way of looking at the world. It's very, very simple. It's very practical, and as you can see from this, because this is just a straight Taoist analysis.
Just the way it is.
This is the way it is.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing that the body of the earth and your own body work on exactly the same system. Now, there are some differences between them. The human body is much more flexible than the body of the earth is. And yet the body of the earth is not rigid. The body of the earth is constantly changing in response to the things around it, especially, for instance, the moon. So it's not just water that moves in the oceans that moves in response to the moon. The shape of the earth itself responds to the moon.
I was listening to a thing from Neil deGrasse, whatever his name is, and he was talking about that the earth is actually pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not, the earth is not a perfect
Sphere.
round sphere.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of pear-shaped. Right? And my understanding of it is it's wider at the equator than it is at either pole. So its actual shape, to exaggerate, is kind of like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? With the equator going through here.
Right.
Now that's a gross exaggeration, but you can see what I mean. It's constantly deforming and reforming, moving all the time.
That was the one that he was talking about, that if you reduce the earth to the size of
Pool
cube, that it would be smoother than the pool cube.
So she's talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, and we were watching him. I think we both independently watched this.
Yes, we did.
This particular video, but what he was saying is, consider the face of the earth. You have mountains like Mount Everest that are 5 miles high, and you have trenches in the ocean that are 5 or 6 miles deep.
They're 11
so
miles.
There's like 11 miles between the deepest place of the earth and the highest place of the earth. But if you were to reduce the earth to the size of a cue ball, it would be smoother than the cue ball.
That was hard for me to get my head around. I'm not sure I was able to do it.
Or to say it a different way, if you were to take a cue ball and blow it up to the size of the earth, the pits and cracks that you can't even see in a cue ball, now it's expanded to the size of the earth. Those pits and cracks would be bigger, higher than Everest and deeper than the Marianas Trench.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just depends on your perspective a little bit. Okay, so this is chapter number 2 in looking at the energy body of the earth, both its structure and function, and its correspondence to your own energy body. They're very, very close. They're not exactly the same, but they're very, very close. Catherine, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that pressure is corresponding to expanding. I mean, when I inhale, I'm not under pressure. I mean, it's counterintuitive, at least for me, at least to me.
Well, it may have more to do with language than anything else. And I don't mean French and English, I just mean the way we structure our language. Pressure is squeezing everything in. When you squeeze everything in, it wants to come back out. So it's not really the pressure, it's the
response.
It's the response to the pressure causes the expansion.
I understand intellectually, but in my body, it's more difficult.
When you breathe in, most people just intuitively feel like, well, I'm breathing in, that's going to cause my body to expand. No. In Tai Chi, it's just the opposite. When you breathe in, you contract inside. And we can do, I threatened to do this, maybe you didn't see it last time we did it. I threatened to do a lesson, maybe we'll do that next week, on why that is true. And so we'll draw some figures up on the board like we did last time and talk about what is happening not only with your diaphragm, your thoracic diaphragm, but your pelvic diaphragm. So those two diaphragms moving. When you breathe in this, here, hold us a second. We can do a fast version of this. When you breathe in because your thoracic diaphragm lowers. And when it lowers, it causes a vacuum, and that draws air in. But at the same time, your pelvic diaphragm rises, right? That's contraction. It's contraction to breathe in. And then when you breathe out, you just relax. Contract, relax, right? Pressure, expansion. Pressure, expansion. That's the answer to your question. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
it's now that you explain it, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay,
but I wouldn't have figured it out by myself. No way. Okay.
That little insight into the way you actually breathe is really important for Tai Chi, but especially for Qigong. Because that's the kind of breathing that you want to practice, especially in the Sunday morning classes, the Sunday morning classes are very slow and very rhythmic. We do repetitive exercises. So it gives you don't have to worry about anything because they're very simple little exercises. And that allows you to focus on your breathing and practice that breathing. But that's the same breathing technique you use in Tai Chi. The problem with trying to do it in Tai Chi is so complicated. So you're worrying about all these other things, but you don't have time to think about your breathing. So you practice it in the Sunday morning. And then when it becomes kind of natural, you can just bring it into your Tai Chi. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think about it. It just begins to happen. All right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That kind of breathing is really important because it's so natural. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if you actually look at the way a human being works, that's the natural way of breathing. Contraction, expansion. It's just the opposite of our kind of day-to-day mentality. You can even watch cartoons, Bugs Bunny cartoons. And when they want to take a deep breath to blow out the candles on a birthday cake, right? Everything expands instead of contracting. Of course, that's what we think. I'm breathing air in, so I must be expanding. But you're not. You're contracting.
It's sort of like the way that we think the sun rises.
It's very similar to that. I don't know what you say in French, but in English, you say in the morning, the sun comes up. And at night, the sun goes down. The sun rises and the sun falls. Well, the sun's not doing anything.
It's our perception.
It's our perception that the sun is doing something. What's happening is the earth is turning. All right? No, it's not that the sun sets in the west. It's that the earth is turning to the east. That's what's actually happening. But until just a couple of hundred years ago, the folk wisdom, nobody even thought about it. Of course, the sun must be moving. You can see it. It's so obvious. That's the truth. The sun comes up in the east, and it goes overhead, and it goes down in the west, and then it must go underneath the earth and come up again. It's going around and around the earth, right? Everybody knows that, except it's not true. It's just the opposite. It's the earth turning. It's not the sun moving. Right?
Right.
Right. So same with the breathing. All right. Any last questions on this? Okay. Let me close the drapes here. Okay, so, oh, and we got to adjust the camera.
It's a really interesting mental experiment exercise to hold that thought that my body and the Earth's body are related, are very similar, operate in the same way. It's almost like I am Earth.
That you are part of the Earth.
I'm of Earth.
Yeah, exactly right. What Annie was saying is, the latest versions of origin of life on Earth are looking not at individuals, but at ecosystems. So it's the system that comes first, and the individuals come later. The system comes in the form of chemistry, of biochemistry. So there is in the new way of looking at it, there is a continuity between geochemistry and biochemistry, and then out of the biochemistry come macromolecules like RNA, and out of RNA comes DNA, and out of DNA comes now individual organisms. Why am I saying that? Oh, because there is no separation between life and the earth. So life itself, the biosphere, is actually a geosphere. It's now the fourth geosphere. So the lithosphere, the rocks, the hydrosphere, the oceans, the atmosphere, and now the biosphere. Those are all aspects of the earth, which means two things. One, the earth itself as a planet is alive. It doesn't have life on it, it is alive. Second, you, me, you, right, are not on the earth, we are of the earth. We are the earth itself, or one aspect of it. That is just like that business with the sun going up and down, or the earth turning.
A change in perspective.
It's a change in perspective. And it makes a difference when you make that perspective. Okay, we've only got 5 minutes left. I wanted to demonstrate a couple of things, very subtle. You can take this into your Tai Chi and Qigong. Whenever you ground yourself, you are lowering your Qi into your Danqian, and then ultimately down into the earth through the bottom of the feet. So you can synchronize your Danqian with the center of the earth and sink into the center of the earth. But when you sink, it's called water going down. It's just like water flowing down. Right? You don't have to push it, it just goes down. When something goes down, something else has to come up. What comes up is your spirit. All right? So one thing that is heavy, water, sinks. The other is light and fiery, and it comes up. So they're going like this. They're stretching your body. Every time you sink in Tai Chi, you also go up. All right? So you sink to the bottom of your feet, but you also go up to the top of your head. You sink to the bottom of your feet, but you come up to the top of your head. You sink, top of the head. Sink, top of the head. So every time you sink, you also come to the top of your head. On the practical point of view, I wanted to do one demonstration and have Annie push me. So you can see one application of this. So suppose Annie comes in and puts her hands on my body, and she wants to begin, she's going to start pushing. If I don't ground myself, you go ahead and push. I'm not grounding myself at all. This is what almost everybody does at the beginning. Because what I was doing was paying attention to her hands. Oh, she's going to push me. Her hands are touching me. All my attention is focused on this, right?
Which means your chi is up here.
Which means my chi is right up underneath her hands, because your chi goes where your mind goes. All right? So, all right, everything is up here. She pushes. Boom, you fall over. All right? So what should you do? You should pay attention to that drawing that we had up there. And when she, even before she touches you, you ground yourself. You sink your chi and you raise your shu. All right? How does that feel?
Like a mountain out of granite.
Now, the more she pushes,
The
the more you stretch that. So she pushes really hard. I'm very relaxed. I'm sinking in this direction and rising in this direction. And it stretches that inner pole. She's pushing into that stretch. And the more she pushes, the more I stretch it. So that stretching is like a bungee cord. Or you could say it's like the surface of a trampoline, only instead of being horizontal, now I've turned it up vertically and I'm stretching it. So she pushes in and I just stretch. Now, that may not be the answer for a fight, but it might gain you a second or so. Okay, guys, we're out of time. So if you're going to stay for beginning Tai Chi, give me 15 minutes. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Ciao.
Catherine, one of the ways that I can hold this idea that when we breathe that we're actually contracting is to remember that I'm creating a vacuum. That the experience, the activity of taking a breath in actually creates a vacuum. And for me, holding that thought at the same time helps me understand it in a bigger way. Oh, that activity creates a vacuum. The vacuum is a real thing that pulls, that activity pulls the air in. That's a very different way of holding that idea. And it helps me to go, oh yeah, okay, that I can actually feel that in my body.
It's true. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It really helps. The image is very clear.
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Yeah. Like, of course I'm contracting. I'm creating a vacuum. I can feel it. All right. See you in a minute.